Professional development and personal development, to me, it is the pressure release valve it is one of the pressure release valves, I should say, but it can be a primary one for helping us offset some of the negative experiences of burnout. And the reason for that is what we're doing is we're building people's self-efficacy, right? So the definition of self-efficacy in layman's terms is really, do I believe that I can do the thing, right? Like, do I have the belief in my ability to get the task done, to get the job done, right? When individuals, whether I'm an individual contributor, whether I'm a manager, if I can think to myself, I can do this, I can handle this, it allows me to essentially shift my stress from, I don't know if I'm going to be able to I can solve problems, I can make decisions, right? And so the more that we start building our skill set, right? If you think about it like a tool belt that we would put around our waist, right? What we want to do is we want to have that tool belt be one of those ones that you have to have the suspenders, right? Because like there's so many different tools in there. When we start building up our skills and deepening those skills, it moves us from this kind of myopic, like, this is all I have in front of me, as like things are just getting worse and things are just going to be more difficult and all that, to now broadening that up, like broadening our scope to, here's all the myriad of different skills that I can apply to be able to help myself.
Welcome back to Leading with Integrity. And today we are talking self-efficacy, personal development, burnout, workplace culture, the future of work, all kinds of work-related topics, and how all of this relates to leadership and our everyday practices as managers. To help me do that, I'm joined by Mickey Fitch-Collins, a human skills and leadership specialist who works to transform those human skills. Things like communication, empathy, resilience, self-efficacy is, of course, a big topic for her as well. Turning all of these things into actionable, practical things that we can actually do to drive success and change in our organizations. And as always, do listen to the end for details of Mickey's website, learn more about her business, which is called Learn It, and you can find those links in the show notes already as well, if you're too impatient to wait until the end. If you're listening to the show today, it's probably, hopefully, because you are in leadership or you're new to leading. You're a first-time manager, first-time founder, perhaps you're in a technical, highly specialist environment. And when you are first promoted from doing that work yourself to leading others who do it, the expectations change overnight, and yet the support that you need to excel at that role rarely shows up alongside it. Leading with Integrity, this very podcast, and my Integrity Leaders online community for leaders just like you, provides emerging technical leaders with a community of peers, people who are going through or have been through the same challenges you are currently facing. We offer proven leadership frameworks, grounded mentorship, and a practical focus to help you lead effectively from day one or day 4 or whichever day it is you're currently on before you found this podcast. If you'd like to learn more about that, do come and visit the website. It's leadingwithintegrity.co.uk. That link is also in the show notes. It's on the screen as well if you're watching us on video. Do come along, learn what you can, hit that green button on the homepage, come and sign up for the community today. And if you're not quite ready for that, you'll also find my LinkedIn information down there. Do connect, drop me a message, let's chat leadership. Happy to do that anytime with anyone. But enough about me. Let's welcome Mickey onto the show and get into this conversation about self-efficacy and more.
Welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Leadership talk for the modern manager. With your host, David Hatch.
Mickey, welcome to Leading with Integrity. It's lovely to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much, David, for the opportunity to be here. I already know that this is going to be a great time today.
Absolutely. Well, that's the point of doing it in my book. So there we go. And to start us off, over to you for a little bit. Sink or swim moment, as they say. Tell us a bit about your career so far, your background, what you do, and why.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have, David, kind of an interesting sort of story, and I'm actually going to take you back about 30 years ago when I was a teenager. Okay.
Okay.
So I live stateside. I grew up in the Chicago area, highly urban sort of environment. And the hobby that I found myself enjoying as a teenager was fishing. I had always loved fishing since I was a little kid. We had a little pond behind my house, and my parents always kind of tell the story that they used to tie a rope around my waist until they knew that I was safe enough to not fall in the water. I'm not sure that the rope would have actually helped much if I fell in the water, but um, I got into fishing, and so much so that I got connected to people in local communities that were kind of running guided fishing trips and kind of local experts and things like that. And folks realized, okay, this kid's got this, she's really good at fishing, like, skill wise, but she's also really good at talking about it. And was kind of asked, the world of fishing, at least here in the States, is predominantly male, predominantly Southern, right? So like, Southern states, and kind of a good old boys sort of club. And so I came around, again, this 14, 15-year-old girl, kind of something a little bit different. I'm in the Chicago area, right? And I start getting asked, well, would you give these seminars to other people to teach them how to fish? And I was like, well, sure, that sounds fun, right? Not realizing what I was doing, or what I said yes to, was standing up in these kind of amphitheater sort of rooms with, 100, 200, 300 guys, mostly, that are like, 3 or 4 times my age. And I'm up there saying, well, this is what you need to do to get better at your fishing, right? But I did that. And I mean, you talk about the sink or swim moment. I jumped to the deep end of the pool, so to speak, right? And that was what I was doing as a teenager. I became, at the time, the youngest professional bass fisherman in the United States. So, most everybody else at that time was, 30, 40, 50 something. Here I am. I'm still, technically underage, right? And I'm doing this stuff. I'm traveling around. I'm giving seminars. I was writing magazine articles. This was pre-podcasting and home internet world, right? So just framing that up a little bit. TV shows, radio shows, expos, doing all of this speaking. And because I was under 18, I couldn't actually do the tournaments themselves because you need to be a legal adult. So I could do everything but. So I had a very, very different teenage experience than the rest of my friends, right? On the weekends, they were, working their jobs or going to the mall, going shopping, whatever it was. And on the weekends, I was fishing and I was filming TV shows, and I was on the professional staff, on the pro staff for, at the height of my career, over 30 companies. I was getting a brand new boat every single year. Like, I mean, it was a big deal, right? And I share that story with you, not only because it's kind of odd, right? But it's the start of who I am. And it gave me my ability to be a public speaker. And that thread has woven through the entirety of my career. So I went on, and the work that I say the work that I chose, it's really the work that chose me, was working in the higher education administration environment. And so I went to college, I went to graduate school, and I tell people I never left, right? I started working for colleges and universities on kind of the student success side of the house, helping students graduate and be successful, socially adjust, become good humans, all that sort of stuff. But through all of that, my favorite opportunities were the opportunities where I could coach people and teach and supervise and mentor, teaching formally in the classroom as well as informally. Again, the public speaking weave, right? Fast forward now to just a few years ago, right? Within about a 2 or 3 year period of time, I finished my PhD, which was in leadership. I turned 40, got married. My wife and I had our first child. And the pandemic happened. All of that stuff happened, within the same 2 or 3 year period of time, right? Little bit of chaos. And what I also realized, David, during that time was, I've been doing this higher education administration thing for the last 20 years, and I don't think I want to do this anymore. All of my passion and my drive for it had completely fallen away, because what I was doing was I was spending so much more time behind closed doors, fighting with my colleagues, fighting with my teammates for resources than I was doing anything to help students actually be successful in that college or university environment. And so I said, I need to make a change. what do I do now? Right? I have 2 advanced degrees in the world of higher education. All of my professional work experience has been in this one field. What do I do now? And so I went through what I call kind of a discernment process and kind of started, doing one of those like values exercises. What do I value? What do I like? What are the environments that I like being in? And I thought all the way back to those times as a teenager. What did I like then? What did I like in my early 20s? What did I like in my late 20s? Going on. And it was always those environments where I was helping people learn. Okay. And so what that naturally found me in is, there's this whole entire world of corporate learning and development where, you can help other people get better at their jobs. And so that's what I do today, David, is I work for an organization called Learn It. And I tell people all the time, my job is to help other people get better at their jobs. So I facilitate virtual and in-person workshops on a variety of different topics from AI fluency to conflict management to communication skills to empathy and listening, all of these sort of things. But that's what I do these days. And it's the best fit. It is so good because I'm bringing together, again, all of those skills from 30 years ago to now.
Wow. Okay. And a pretty neat little definition of leadership there as well, as helping other people do their jobs better.
Absolutely.
Like yeah. Wow. Okay. So, let's start with fishing. Now, as a layperson, to me, the main skill of fishing appears to be patience.
Sure.
But I'm guessing there's more to it than that. I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah. Well, and that's interesting is, I think most of us, I think a lot of people, we go fishing when we're little kids and stuff. And it's usually, you have some sort of a float or bobber and you're like drowning a worm or a minnow or something like that. And that's fishing. This was a different type of fishing, right? This is all lure fishing. This is fast paced. It's competitive, right? So it requires, I know this might sound silly to some folks, but it requires a pretty intense scientific biological understanding of kind of like what's happening in the water, around the water, inside the water. How do these fish behave and how do they kind of relate to what's going on in their waterway? And then it's problem solving. That's really what fishing is problem solving. It's the hunting that people do on land. It's the hunting in water, right? And so it's trying to predict, it's trying to problem solve, work quickly to be able to kind of get to the end goal, which is all those skills that I think as adults, it's that's the stuff that I do at work. That's the stuff I do in my personal life. And it was a hobby, for a long time. And then it became my work and then it became my hobby again. And it still is to this day.
That was going to be my next question. Do you still do it? Did you ever make it to one of those competitions in the end or not?
I did not, because as it turns out, as I was aging, I went off to college and it turns out, the professors, they want you to be in class all the time. They want you to be there.
Annoying,
I couldn't do, right. It really getting in my way. I couldn't do the volume of travel that I had been doing when I was in my high school environment. And so I had to kind of make a choice, right? And I should say obviously, but maybe it's not obvious. The choice that I made was I needed to lean into my education. That was the expectation of me, and that's what I wanted to do. But yeah, I fish all the time. I live in northern Wisconsin, and so where I live, it's frozen water for about 6 months of the year. We still have quite a bit of snow on the ground right now, and I am not an ice fisherman yet, but I'm eagerly awaiting the ice going away and being able to fish. And the wonderful thing now is I have a 5.5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old. And so I get to take my little kids fishing, and both of them have kind of gotten the fishing bug too. And so it's always fun for us as a family to be able to go out. And, I don't really get to do any fishing anymore with them because it's, untangling lines and doing all the things that, I experienced as a youngster as well.
Well, that's nice, though. It's nice to have that kind of shared hobby.
Mm.
Yeah, and you never know, you've still got time for the competitions, right? You're still below the average age, as you said.
For sure. Well, and what's interesting is the area that I live, there are some pretty, sizable tournaments that come here. And I come to the lakes here, and my wife has encouraged me. She said, you should do this. You should think about doing this. And I think I will when the kids get a little bit older, right? We're kind of in the thick of it. We're in the season of very heavy parenting, but I do think that it would be fun to kind of see all of the things that I learned, again, 30 years ago about how this operates in terms of tournaments and stuff. Obviously, like any career field or any industry, technology has massively influenced kind of what the world of professional fishing looks like, and the sophistication has increased significantly. But at the core of it, it's still person versus fish. So I think I could probably do okay. We'll see.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, I think it's definitely not my cup of tea. Like, did you ever see the movies, the Crocodile Dundee movies? Like, his approach
absolutely.
to fishing. His approach to fishing is the sort of thing that might, encourage me. But beyond that, yeah.
Yeah.
But each to their own, right?
Exactly. It's the things you do or you don't grow up doing. And and that's the thing is whether it's fishing or something else, it's like those experiences that we have as little ones. It's like, yeah, that's the stuff you figure out what you like and what you don't like. And, some kids are outdoors kids and just want to be, making the mess and doing the stuff outside, and other kids are inside kids and in between. So, yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. And then the COVID years, was that really? So they say there's the three or four most stressful things if we include divorce, but the main three are like moving house, having kids, and getting married, right? And so you did at least two of those in the same year and a pandemic.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. It's I don't know that I really realized in the moment of like, oh, I'm doing this and I'm doing this. Cause it's like, life is organic. You're just doing what you're doing. But as I reflect on it, and when I like share that with folks, it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, that was a lot. That was a lot.
I felt my eyebrows going up as you said it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There was definitely a lot more like gray hair that sprouted during that time for sure.
Yeah, I bet. But worth it in the end, no doubt.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. So let's talk about the work you do as leadership in leadership. So there's one particular area that I find myself drawn to recently, which is kind of the struggles of the middle manager, the people who kind of feel the pinch from both sides, as it were. They're getting the angst from the top and they're getting the questions from below and all of this sort of thing. So, maybe that's preempting your answer, but quite a lot of middle managers seem pretty miserable quite a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is, if I haven't spoiled it already? And what do you think is the biggest thing that their managers, their leaders are getting wrong about them?
Yeah. Well, and I so appreciate this question. And this actually was the focus of my research that I did for my dissertation for my PhD. And so this is not just something that I speak from passion. I speak from research, and I also speak from lived experience of having been a middle manager multiple times. And yeah, you talk about the push-pull, right? Which is, they have folks above them that are demanding certain things. They have folks below them that are demanding certain things. And, we're not all Stretch Armstrong or Gumby or fill in the blank, right? It's really hard to be in that role, right? Because those middle managers are kind of the shock absorbers of an organization, right? They're getting all this pressure from above. They're getting pressure and emotions from below. But there's also these secondary other things, right? Which is isolation is a big one. That was a huge thing that I uncovered in my research process, was this isolation and this loneliness, because many middle managers go from being in a frontline position where they have peers, they have a core group. This might even people that they're, going out for, beers at the end of the week or whatever it is, right? And then they become the boss. And immediately when they do that peer to manager sort of thing, they lose that social circle. They lose that camaraderie of other people that have the same job title or are doing very similar, if not the same thing as me in the organization. And now they are a team of one, right? And that isolation of, I used to be able to look to my left and look to my right and have teammates and colleagues that I could say, oh, you're experiencing this too, or, what are you doing to tackle this, or whatever it is. Now I'm expected to be party of one and have all the solutions and somehow magically no longer need that social support. Well, that's not real, right? So there's that isolation. And in a lot of organizations, managers, right, you're the manager of this team. And, there isn't usually, you might have a peer who's also at your level, but they're managing another team or they're managing in another department. So hierarchically, you might have a similar or same title, but you're doing different sort of work, right? So there's this experience of isolation. There's also isolation in terms of how a lot of organizations slot those managers in. And what I mean by that is that those managers are very oftentimes left out of any of the strategy conversations, but they are expected to execute that strategy flawlessly, right? So they don't get to be part of the conversations, but they're expected to deliver on the conversations. And even as I'm saying that, and as people are listening to that, you're probably like, that's kind of bonkers. It is. I mean, it's crazy because it's like, hey, I'm going to not include you in the conversation about generating expectations, but somehow I'm going to magically assume that you know what all of those expectations are and know exactly how I want you to deliver on them, right? So there's that feeling of, isolation, which obviously leads to frustration, which obviously leads to burnout and all of these sort of things, right? There's also, and I'm making a bit of a laundry list here, but I want to shine the spotlight on this because I feel very passionate about this stuff. People are also inheriting decisions that other people made, but they didn't make them, but they're still accountable for the outcomes, right? So there's that challenge. And one of the other things, David, that I encountered in the research too, is that the quality of the supervision that these middle managers experience is oftentimes pretty poor. The reason for that is because people assume, well, if you're experienced enough, if you're talented enough that you got this manager job, well, you don't need this level of support, just do your job. You don't need professional development. You don't need mentoring. You don't need coaching. Just figure it out because you got into this role, so you're good to go. And so what happens is oftentimes those senior managers or those directors, whomever are the folks above them, are really just kind of no news is good news sort of folks. And they're not providing the support. So again, we have this isolation, we have this loneliness, we have this, likely for burnout sort of experience, right? So what is the antidote? You asked, okay, what are the problems and what is the antidote to this? The antidote obviously is everything opposite of that. But it's really, and this is really troublesome because I'm seeing a lot of organizations are completely just jettisoning, I don't even know if that's the right word, getting rid of the middle manager strip in their organizations. And that, number one, is hugely problematic. I think in 3 or 4 or 5 years, a lot of organizations are going to say, oh gosh, that was a really bad idea. Because now we have senior level folks that are managing dozens and dozens and dozens of people. So nobody's actually getting good supervision. But the antidote to this is to recognize, number one, these middle managers are real humans. They themselves are also on a journey of growth and development. They themselves also have a need to be seen and understood, right? And they need to, because of the position that they're in, they are expected to be advocates and the voice of the people that they supervise. They have their pulse or their finger on the pulse of what's going on. Therefore, they need to be in the room when it comes to talking about strategy and direction and plans. And so we need to bring these people into the room because they're going to be the ones that are going to say, yeah, that's a good idea, but we don't have the capacity to execute that. Or yeah, that's a really good idea, but we need some additional resources that's going to look a little different or whatever that might be, right? So my advice, my guidance that I would offer to folks is involve the middle managers early and often, and make sure that you have a deep understanding of what does support look like for those folks.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you've hit on several of the common themes that I find myself complaining about all the time as well.
Yeah. And I've been there. I mean, I've been there.
Yeah. Me too. Maybe not as frequently as you, thankfully, but
yeah, I wouldn't wish it upon people for sure.
Yeah. It's one of those things though. I mean, the whole the hierarchical structure and how we define work and all these sort of things all gets wrapped up in all of this. But to me, the real work of leadership is not in those lofty heights of C-suite, because most of the time they maybe interact with half a dozen people, on a regular basis, and it'll be the same half a dozen. And in a lot of organizations, those are people who are carefully selected for their ability to say yes.
An echo chamber. Yep.
Exactly. So the real actual leadership in most organizations is that first line of management, isn't it? They're the people who interact with not just probably the most people in terms of their leadership, but also the people who are actually doing the work of the organization, who I would argue are the most important people in any business or company, because nothing happens without them. So exactly as you said, they've got their finger on the pulse. They know what's going on with customers, with users, with their people, the people who are driving this business. And yet so often excluded from the conversation. What do we think? Should we do this? Should we do that? What do users actually want? What are people willing to pay for? What are the pain points in our business as well and for our people? They just get handed these sort of grand strategies from on high and then exactly as you said, expected to deliver it, and it's their fault if it doesn't happen. It's one of the great frustrations for me. And then this phenomena of removing that whole section of the management structure, I mean, that's just, especially if you've got senior managers who are used to only having those half a dozen people they interact with, and then all of a sudden they don't have that buffer manager who is actually probably doing all of the work and half of their job too, by the way.
Yeah.
I can see that being a bit of a shock.
Yeah. I mean, I really believe, a lot of organizations, and again, I mean, I think that this kind of came out of COVID, so over the last, 5-6 years or so, all these organizations, and you see this especially in like the big tech companies, just kind of removing that middle manager layer. And the reason that is shared for that is like, well, this is organizational bloat, right? We're trimming the fat, or it's unnecessary. That decision-making, and I think now in the age of AI, as people are starting to ask these big questions of how exactly is this going to affect the job market and what is work and what is my role and all of this sort of stuff, there's this preemptive strike that I think a lot of organizations are making of like, oh, well, if AI can reduce our workloads by 30%, then we need 30% less of the people. These two things to me are indicative, I think, of short-sighted thinking, right? Because if we're only thinking about bottom line and headcount, FTE headcount in organizations, right? That is one side of the story. What we're not looking at is how are we creating value and impact out of the people and the humans and the intelligence and the relationships that we have in combination with AI, right? And I really do believe, and this is a big word that I'm going to use here, but I really do believe there's going to be a reckoning of both of these matters in the next 5 to 10 years in the global economy of like, oops, that whole middle manager layer, it turns out that's actually really helpful because we've had a whole bunch of frontline folks that have been reporting to senior director folks, which means nobody's actually been getting any sort of supervision and direction for the last, 5 to 10 years, which means we've actually been delivering a bunch of products and services and offerings that nobody actually wants. We have a ton of failures and turns out wasted a ton of money because we're doubling back and we're having to redo things and rework and all of this sort of stuff. And also, we forgot to account for the fact that humans have the ability to be malleable and change. And so we didn't actually give our humans the ability to, or the space to retool themselves and figure out how to deliver value in different sort of ways and make different impact. We just said, we don't need your job anymore because AI, right? So these two things, and don't get me wrong, I am a huge AI user. I'm a huge advocate for AI, but these two things, it's very easy for organizations to make short-sighted decisions around, and without truly understanding the fulcrum that is the middle manager in organizations.
Yeah, I agree. And tying it to AI is a great point. I mean, there's so many parallels there on there about creating this kind of future skill gap as well. So in like the tech world, for example, there's this whole phenomenon. I've talked about it before, and the listeners are probably bored of me banging on about this, but I hear it quite frequently, so I always bring it up. But the AI right now is good enough that it can replace like the junior developer, say.
Yep.
So a lot of companies are taking that short-sighted decision. Problem is that even right now, it still needs that senior developer to supervise it and check its work.
Right.
There's whether or not it will ever not need that is a separate question. But assuming that it's always going to need that, where are the future senior developers going to come from if you've sacked all the junior ones?
Exactly.
And it's the same thing with these managers, isn't it? Like if you get rid of the middle ones, who are the future directors and senior leaders going to be in your organization? Are people going to be expected to jump from like the lowest level? And I hate saying things like that, but the bottom level of your hierarchy, the doers, are they going to jump straight from that to directors leading hundreds of people? I mean, that feels like a jump, a stretch, unrealistic.
Totally agree with you. And part of it, and I appreciate that you bring that up too, is like, I mean, part of it is we're thinking about succession planning in organizations and being very realistic about the generational progressions that happen. We're all aging and we're all moving, and so what happens, when say a lot of organizations have senior director sort of folks and vice presidents, that those are the folks that maybe chronologically are ages 40 to 60, right? So if we fast forward everybody 10 years, who's going to be, what does the succession look like in those roles? And what about this huge gap that's happening there? And I look at it and I say, well, there's a lot of job security for people like myself that are talking about skills gaps, right? And doing the work of self-efficacy, because there is going to be this unfortunate expectation that you're going to be able to kind of double hop to be able to fulfill these sort of roles to keep organizations moving. And it's just, it's nonsensical. And it's, I think it's really going to create a lot of organizational angst and pain and burnout. And frankly, a lot of people, I think especially the younger generations coming into the workforce now, they're not going to tolerate that stuff. They're not going to stick around and, say, yeah, sure, I'll just put in, 18 hours a day and just be fine with it and just deal with this, unhealthy organization. I don't think that, there, again, like I said, this term reckoning, I'm very interested to kind of see what this looks like over the next 5 to 10 years. And probably even less than that. Yeah.
Yeah, potentially. It might already be in the works, as it were. I think there's the other possible outcome of this, of course, is, if we look at things like the fact we have an ever-aging population, that we're living longer alongside that, and that things like social security, as a result of the last sort of 5-10 years, are maybe not going to be there by the time even when you and I get to retirement age, or retirement age as it is now anyway.
What is retirement age going to be?
Well, quite, I mean, I'm probably going to be working till the end at this rate, but so that sort of senior leadership level, they may never move on. They might just be there forever. So then you've got the worker level, let's call it. Are they just going to be expected to do that same job with no opportunity for progression or more skills or anything like that, or any change in their work for 40 years? I mean, that doesn't seem reasonable either. So I don't know. You're right. There's got to be some sort of reckoning coming, because this isn't sustainable the way it is now. It'll be interesting,
I agree.
Whatever happens.
Stay tuned, right?
Yeah. Sort of glad I'm a business of one and I don't have to directly worry about any of this. So I'm just on the sidelines and we'll see how it plays out. Sort of hinted there anyway at the next question, which is this concept around personal development. And you've mentioned burnout as well already. So you tie these two things together, which I found intriguing, because I don't think I've seen those directly connected before necessarily. So, I mean, why and how are those two things linked, and how does one help the other?
Yeah. So, I mean, when we think about burnout, there's some great, and I'm not going to get too academic with all of this stuff, but there's some great theoretical models around kind of the stages of burnout. And in short, one of the primary models, there's 12 stages, right? Most of us think about burnout as, the person that is having major medical issues, major mental health, all of this sort of stuff. But burnout starts way before that, right? Like burnout starts with I'm starting to push on my personal boundaries to just give more to work. I'm coming earlier to work. I'm staying later. I'm saying yes to things out of pressure rather than performance, or, whatever this is. So first is the recognition that we all oscillate somewhere amongst all of those 12 stages of burnout, and that's normal. Okay. The early stages are the stages where we do the interventions and we start doing the boundary setting, right? But most people, when they hear burnout, right, they think about the person that's, sleeping in their office or, whatever it is. Professional development and personal development to me is the pressure release valve it is one of the pressure release valves, I should say, but it can be a primary one for helping us offset some of the negative experiences of burnout. And the reason for that is what we're doing is we're building people's self-efficacy, right? So the definition of self-efficacy in layman's terms is really, do I believe that I can do the thing, right? Like, do I have the belief in my ability to get the task done, to get the job done, right? When individuals, whether I'm an individual contributor, whether I'm a manager, if I can think to myself, I can do this, I can handle this, it allows me to essentially shift my stress from, I don't know if I'm going to be able to I can solve problems, I can make decisions, right? And so the more that we start building our skill set, right? If you think about it like a tool belt that we would put around our waist, right? What we want to do is we want to have that tool belt be one of those ones that you have to have the suspenders, right? Because like there's so many different tools in there. When we start building up our skills and deepening those skills, it moves us from this kind of myopic, like, this is all I have in front of me, is like things are just getting worse and things are just going to be more difficult and all that, to now broadening that up, like broadening our scope to here's all the myriad of different skills that I can apply to be able to help myself, right? Things from, how do I manage my time better? How do I set priorities that match what my employer needs and wants with what I need and want? How do I build systems and structures and processes? I spend a lot of time talking with people about habits and processes and structures to be more effective in your work, but also be more efficient. How do I bring AI into all of this, right? I mean, that's a huge piece. But when we're talking about self-efficacy comes, it's a belief system, but it's a belief system that comes from my understanding of the tool set that's in front of me and my ability to do things, right? It gives us the language and it gives us the frameworks, right, as we do professional and personal development to help us move away from, oh my God, I feel so overwhelmed, to I can do this, right? Small skill wins, right? Whether it's I'm looking down at my calendar here, right? Whether it's kind of resetting up what my calendar looks like for the work week, or it's coming up with different ways to professionally say no. I talk with folks about that a lot too. That's the stuff that creates momentum, right? Momentum is the stuff that we want for people to feel healthier, right? It's the stuff that offsets burnout, right? So that's where that linkage comes into play. And I can totally understand why you say like, oh, I've never really kind of seen burnout and professional development linked with one another. But what it does is it gives us space and place to pause and reflect and look in the mirror, frankly, instead of just constantly feeling reactive. It gives us a chance to be proactive instead of reactive. And it's, to me, and again, I'm biased because of the work that I do professionally, but the right professional development is the stuff that is practical, it's immediate, it's personal, and it's helping people feel that they have capability, they have agency, they have choice, they have the ability to learn, rather than just kind of the walls closing in around them, right? The analogy that I always share with folks, for anybody who's, kind of has watched the original Star Wars, well, there's arguments about which one is that, but I think about that scene where they're in the trash compactor, right? Yeah, there it is. Yeah. Where they're in that, that big trash compactor, right? And the walls are coming in and they're swirling around and there's like the creature that's in there, like trying to drown him and all that sort of stuff, right? That's, I think, what a lot of people feel like. Professional development and personal development, right? What that does is it stops the walls before you're about to get smushed, right? It gets you out of the sinking swamp of garbage and nonsense. And it gives you the ability to say, okay, what are the different tools that I have at my capacity? And how do I use those tools to impact my belief system, my self-efficacy? And that combination of things is what gives people health. It's what gives people opportunity. It's what gives people mindset changes. And to me, that is, again, I use this term antidote because I think that that's such a palpable term, right? It's the antidote. It's the vaccine, right? It's the thing that helps us feel healthier and stronger in the workplace.
Yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense now. Yeah, so I can see like very clear connections between self-development, personal development, and say levels of confidence, competence breeds confidence, and you get confidence by learning things to begin with, at least. Things like imposter experience as well. Like the more you know, the less likely maybe you are to experience that, although it is its own thing and it's not directly connected to confidence, is it? But so I can see that all as part of a chain that then leads into avoiding burnout, because if you're more confident and you feel more like, you're in the right role and you're capable of doing it, so you don't have those imposter feelings, then you're also more able to do things like set the right boundaries, like those early interventions on burnout, like learning about what are the stages of burnout and how do I recognize those early, so it's before it's too late, before those walls have closed in on me and I'm drowning with a monster or whatever. So I can see it. I can get it now. Yeah, it makes sense.
Well, and the thing that I you use the word confidence too, and confidence and competence, right? And I always tell people, it's like, think of them as like the left hand, right hand, right? As you said, as I build my competence at work, as I build my competence with my hobbies, whatever it is, that helps me feel more confident. But confidence is an interesting sort of thing, right? Because confidence, there is an internal component to that, but it's really about how we think about ourselves as a whole being, right? Self-efficacy is really focused on task, right? So I can be confident, right? Like I like who I am. I feel good about how I show up in spaces, like all of this sort of stuff, but I still can lack the self-efficacy to get the job done, get the task done, right? Of like, I'm not sure how to do my work, but I feel very confident as a manager. Confidence is also something, by the way, too, that is very external, right? Is that, even as folks are, listening to this, right? Oh, I hear confidence in Mickey's voice. I hear confidence in David's voice, right? Or how somebody gives a presentation at work. Oh, that they were so confident as they did that, or they were so confident in how they answered my question, right? It's this very external, very subjective barometer of somebody else. The reason why I focus in, not that confidence isn't important, but the reason why I focus in on self-efficacy is because that is entirely inside us, right? And we have, this is what's so beautiful about being a human being, is that we have agency to impact our self-efficacy. We can do little things, right, to build up our ability in believing in ourselves to do the things that we need to do. And, and it's really powerful because, it's like education, right? That people can't take your education away from you. People cannot take learning away from you. People can't tell you don't learn, right? That's what we do as humans, is we learn, we grow, we develop. And so it is this confidence, competence, self-efficacy, confidence sort of thing. It's very interesting stuff. I could go on and on and on about that, and I won't.
Yeah. No, it's very relevant though. I think, you're right to make that distinction. I wonder if it's almost a case of like the small things adding up over time to the confidence. But I also think like confidence a lot of the time is in perception and like how you perceive others perceive you as well. And it can also be contextual as well. So like someone who's super confident, say on a one-to-one podcast recorded over the internet, might be completely different in a face-to-face setting where there's 50 people in the room, for example.
Sharing for a friend.
Asking for a friend. So I think, that context can make a difference too. And then also the thing that I find quite fascinating about confidence is where that line is, where it tips over into arrogance. Because so many leaders out there who just think leadership is about confidence and nothing else. And so all they do is focus on that external persona. They put the confidence out there and they think that's what leadership is all about. And they very quickly, in my experience, find a cliff to fall off or run off.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. And I also think, and I just want to toss this out there, is confidence, as you were speaking about it, is confidence is also an inherently biased thing, right? It is biased towards majority members in the room, right? Confidence looks and sounds like dominant races, dominant genders, dominant communication styles, and so for any of us that aren't that, whether it's underrepresented demographic factors around gender, around race, around age, around sexual orientation, gender identity, whatever it is, there's judgment made based around the confidence factor. And again, this is why I say it's very subjective, because when we get into rooms and spaces, I mean, this is the ongoing conversation all the time about who's in the C-suite, right? Who's running organizations. And yeah, that confidence becomes kind of a theatrical experience, right? Because it's like, well, this is what confidence looks like in these spaces. Well, who's in those spaces? Who's not in those spaces, right? I recently have been having a conversation through LinkedIn messaging with a good friend about neurodivergence and self-efficacy and confidence, and how it is biased against those individuals that are neurodivergent, right? Because the way in which processing happens looks less, and I put it in air quotes, less confident, right? Interesting. Right. It's biased against women. Right. And again, we can talk about this a lot, but I mean, I just encourage folks to think about that as when we're talking, not that we shouldn't focus on being confident and seeing confidence and encouraging confidence, but there's other stuff that's there too, because I can't control, like you said, I can't control how other people see me. What I can control is how I choose to show up, how I'm able to show up, frankly.
Absolutely. I think there's a need as well for leaders to be a bit self-reflective on topics like this, because something else I find about confidence, kind of how you've just described it, it's almost like projection a lot of the time. Like, I perceive others' confidence in the way that I think my confidence works. So the classic one there is like the extrovert introvert. So as an introvert, to me, the confident people will be the ones sitting quietly in the corner waiting for everyone else to shut up.
Yeah.
Whereas for an extrovert, they will see the people who are making their views known, who are being the loudest and getting their points across. They're the confident ones in the room. Yeah. And quite often in leadership, actually, I think confidence looks like just being willing to ask the right question, being willing to not be afraid of looking stupid by asking what other people, even you, might think is a stupid question.
Right.
Being that a little bit vulnerable around starting conversations in a productive
That's exactly
way.
what I was just... Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say is your willingness to be vulnerable. That is to me, a key core ingredient to confidence. But I think most people over-index towards those other things that are perceptions of confidence, right? Big voices, big personality, big presence in a room. I mean, even the whole topic of executive presence, right? Highly controversial about what executive presence is. And frankly, for me, I absolutely refuse to, when people are like, Mickey, I want you to, do some work with us and, teach people about executive presence. I'm like, oh, that is such a woefully tangled up, biased thing. Like what you're telling me is you want me to help people be more middle-aged white guy extrovert in rooms. That's not what we're talking about here, right?
Yeah, that's a bit of a trigger phrase for me as well, I have to say. I think there's that whole so I think presence is important, but I define it more in terms of like the physical act of being in the room or the virtual equivalent, as in showing up. That's important. But this whole concept of executive presence, I also don't like it for similar reasons, the culture fit in inverted commas.
Yes.
That one. These are both concepts, I think, that are used just as like a blunt instrument because you don't want to hire someone for this role and you don't want to have to justify it. I'm sure they have wider applications as well, but that's the best example I can think of.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with you.
Wow, I've lost track of time, as I often do.
This is great.
I think we kind of covered that question about sort of productivity theatre and busyness versus productivity. And I do think that's kind of a symptom of the modern age, maybe. Like there used to be that sort of informal competition in the office when we had shared calendars about who could have the most appointments each day and who looked the busiest. Yeah. And it was quite easy, isn't it, to sort of forget, but if they're in meetings all day, what are they actually doing? Yeah. Where's the work? Who's doing the work?
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge confusion, and I see this, with my work at Learn It. I'm in organizations in lots of different industries all the time, right? I'm with financial services companies, and then I'm with construction companies, and then I'm with nonprofits, and so it's interesting to kind of dip into these different worlds. But I do oftentimes find myself talking with folks at the group level, the individual level, right? Of like, let's talk about the confusion that we have made and built and reinforced, and like gremlins, we feed them and get them wet after midnight, right? We have confused activity with value creation and impact. And I think like just because we're moving, right, just because our calendar is full does not mean that you're actually doing anything valuable or that you're actually making an impact, right? Impact is a lot harder to measure, right? And it takes time, and it takes deep discussions, and like getting people to actually talk about outcomes instead of output, right? Like I can do a whole bunch of output, but a lot of organizations don't really define like what does outcome look like and what does value look like. And so the default is, well, I just need to look busy. And I think in today, right, in today's economy, I hate to say in today's economy, right? Ugh. It sound like the start of an AI generated post or something. In today's economy. But I do think so many people are so worried about job security that this confusion is reinforced by what we're seeing in organizations and frankly in our friends and family and our networks around us, is that if I'm just busy, then people are like, oh my gosh, well, we can't possibly not have that person, or we can't possibly not have that role because look at how busy they are. Well, what are they actually doing to create value and to create outcome? This isn't about, the conversations about speed, that's done. Right? Like we don't need to talk about speed anymore. And the reason why we don't need to talk about speed is because we have AI, right? Everybody can be fast. We are all, we are not marathon runners anymore, right? Because now everybody's, a sprinter. Well, actually nobody's a sprinter anymore because we all now have the ability to sprint. So where is the marathon actually leading us? Right? Like that's so that productivity theory, there's so much about that, but I just encourage everybody, is to give yourself some time to pause to just actually say like, what have I done today? And this is actually a great reflection at the end of the day. I do this shutdown sequence that I do every single day. And one of the things that I do is a gratitude journal practice. And one of the questions, I have an automated, process for myself. But one of the questions that I have with that is, what value did I create and for whom? Right? Like, and so I have to be able to answer that question. And I challenge myself to answer that question in 100 words or less every single day. I gave myself a box, 100 words, right? What value did I create and for whom? And if I can't, then wow, looks like I missed the mark on 8 hours of work today. I encourage everybody, put that mirror up.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think defining what value looks like for your organization, and I was talking to someone about this morning, more in the context of like rebelling against the 9-to-5 culture sort of thing. And it was in the context of someone asking for a very minor contractual change about their hours of work, just going from, I think it was like from 40 to 37 hours. Yeah. And the answer was no. And how can 3 hours possibly make that much difference? But it makes me think like there's so many bosses, I won't call them leaders, in the world who are in that mindset where time equals productivity, time spent equals value. And when they're in that mindset, that's why these people who are going around just trying to look busy, that's why it's working. Because the people supervising them are thinking, oh, wow, they look busy. Great. I'm getting my money's worth or whatever.
Yeah.
And it needs to change. It's so annoying, isn't it?
Well, these are the same folks, though, that believe that work needs to happen in office buildings, right? Mm-hmm. And again, you talk about these trends, this push, and it's a little quieter lately, but this push over the last, 9 to 12 months, return to office mandates, right? This idea, and I had a great friend of mine use just an absolutely wonderful phrase to talk about this is, why am I being held hostage to a physical environment to do my work, because that's what it is, right? You have to come into this building, and you think about this in especially bigger organizations, you're badging in, right? I mean, this whole like the badging culture, you're scanning in so that people are seeing where and how you're moving through the building and all of this sort of stuff, and people monitoring clicks, all this sort of stuff. Why am I being held hostage to a physical environment? But also, why am I being held hostage to a time frame in which I do work? Certainly, let me be very clear. There are absolutely spaces and places and work and stuff. We need to be in certain places, and that needs to happen during certain times, all this sort of stuff. But for those other roles, it's like, I mean, I think about for my own self. I mean, I'm in my mid 40s. I've been working for 20 plus years, right? I know when my energy is best, when my thinking is most clear, when I do my best strategy. And I also know when it's, if the way in which our organizations are structured is we'll just grunt through that. And it's like, well, like you are holding me hostage to just struggling and tripping over myself for the last 2 hours of every single workday, because that's what I'm supposed to do. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, it's like trying to stay awake at night just 'cause, right? It's like silly things we did in college, right? Why would I do that when I know it's not fruitful, when there's not going to be something productive that comes from that? It's a little crazy.
Yeah, it does seem to me like there's an adjustment that didn't happen after. So when particularly Western economies, certainly the US and the UK, as we moved away from manufacturing, where the physical location was crucial, into like more office and service-based economies, it feels like there should have been a parallel transition in terms of the nature of work, the hours and all of this, but obviously didn't happen because, the bosses, the managers, whatever, were stuck in that frame of mind of work is a place, not an activity. Right. And we've never really kicked that, at least not on a global scale. There are certain industries that are really, really good at this, like the tech industry, for example, are pretty good at that. I don't know. I can't see it being solved until that particular generation is no longer in the workplace.
Yeah.
And I hate putting people in generational boxes. And there are definitely exceptions all the way through that group of people.
Yeah.
But it also seems to be that the people saying these things all tend to come from that same generation. So it's hard to kind of break that link, I think.
Well, and I think if you go to the core of it, when I think about this, and I will be very clear, I'm a very fortunate and very privileged individual by work and by education. My wife and I have structured our professional lives to be remote employees. She owns her own business. We've done all of this stuff to be present for our kids, right? Like we have oriented that to be around and be involved in our kids, right? And so there's privilege that allows us to do that. There's also a lot of strategy that allows us to do that. Not everybody has that, and I understand that, and I want to acknowledge that. I do think, though, when we talk about, I agree with you. I don't like putting people in generational boxes and, all of this sort of stuff. But I also think I agree on we need to kind of age this out, but when we look at the core of the return to office mandates or the productivity theater stuff, like all of that, there is a common thread through that. And that is that I, as boss, do not trust employee. Right. And there's no one out there. I shouldn't say no one. Very few people out there would admit that they believe that. However, the way in which people act, and again, I'll use your term boss, right? Because we're not going to call them managers or leaders. The way that they act, the way that those bosses act, is that they are working in spaces and places and reinforcing distrust, because I need to see you doing the work. I need to have constant check-ins. I need to manage by walking around, right? Like all of these concepts, because I don't trust that you're actually doing the work. And doing the work looks like a bunch of crazy fingers, on the keyboard, or a whole bunch of reports, people sweating, whatever it is. You're in this space and there's papers everywhere. Right? Instead of, again, coming back to value creation and outcome, right? And impact. And so I do think, if we get at the core, what are the core ethos problems in organizations? It's humans' inability to trust other humans to actually follow through on why we're here, right? If we started trusting the organizations that do that, they hire good people, they get out of the way, they empower them, they flow resources in their direction. And as you said so eloquently before, is asking really good questions and listening, right? Like that's the stuff that helps people. I mean, it truly is one of the salves that heals all the wounds, I think, in most organizations these days, is trust and listening.
Yeah, I agree that, I mean, trust is definitely probably the biggest factor. I don't know. I think I'm probably a little bit more critical of these bosses than you are. And maybe that's biased from my own experiences, but I think there's also a big part of it, at least in like the high specialism, the knowledge driven kind of work, where there's perhaps an intellectual laziness, a resistance to change, that kind of, this is the way I've always managed, this is the way I always shall manage. Yeah. And just not being willing to realize that actually times have changed. I mean, AI is a great example of this, where people in those boss roles, they don't need, and they certainly never can hope to have all of the knowledge of everyone who's working for them. Mm-hmm. Not like they could 50 years ago, where, you know, the bosses then were people who had done all of these jobs at least once in their career. They knew everything and it hadn't really changed that much since they were doing it. So they were in that position of, I guess, intellectual and experience driven authority, where they could just say, you're doing that wrong, you're doing that right, you know, that sort of thing. That's not the case anymore. I don't think it has been for 20 or 30 years, to be honest. Yeah. So there's a bit of arrogance behind it too, I think, and lack of realism to how far the world has changed, and trying to still apply these 30, 40, 50-year-old management styles to a workplace that is just, it just doesn't work. Like you're 100 years out of date or more. Yeah. So I don't know, that I get quite passionate about it, let's say. And I try not to criticize individuals, because there are definitely exceptions. There are people who are much older than me who are way better than this at this. But yeah, it's not so much about age. I think it's about willingness to change, willingness to adapt.
Yeah. And you and I feel are very aligned on these things. I mean, I say to people all the time is like, humans are objects of inertia, right? Like if we're in motion, we want to continue to be in motion. But if I'm not in motion, I'm not getting off my couch, right? And getting off the couch is the willingness to change my supervision and management style, my willingness to become fluent in, generative AI, my willingness to look at that my supervision style for the last 20 years does not work at all with the people that are now part of my organization. Or exactly as you said, is that my willingness, again, I mean, I talk about this a lot in some of the workshops I lead on change management, is that most of us are carrying around these big, gigantic, invisible sacks over our shoulders with all these horrible change experiences that we've experienced personally and professionally. Poorly managed, poorly communicated, all of this sort of stuff, right? And so we're carrying those around, and somehow we're expecting each other to lead positive change experiences. But most of us are, you have to offset 50 negative ones with one positive, or 50 positive ones for one negative, right? And expecting people to just, blindly follow change and to just do it for the right reasons, or just do it because it's the altruistic good thing to do. We have to be able to, in some essences, we have to be able to communicate really clearly to people why change needs to happen, right? And I think in our workplaces, most of change is about what and how. It's not, why are we actually doing this? Why should you do this? What's in it for you, right? And so we miss all of that stuff, or we don't involve people in conversations early enough to say, hey, there's a change coming and let's talk about that change. And like, how do you feel about that? What are you thinking? Where do you think the impact is? And rather we just wait for like, here's launch day on the big change initiative. And then we scratch our heads and we wonder, why is everybody so mad about this? Well, because we've done this 50 times before. And every single one of those times, it's been a failure, right? So, I mean, there is this, again, mindset change, this shift that people need to have a willingness to get off the couch, and say, you know what? I don't know. I don't know how. I don't know where. I mean, this is how I feel with AI is I don't know where and I don't know how and I don't know where this is going, but you know what? I'm going to get off the couch and I'm going to jump in and say, you know what? I got my life vest on. I can swim in these waters. I'll figure it out, right? Somebody at some point is going to teach me how to swim in these waters, or I'm going to teach myself and it's going to be okay, right? But there's a vulnerability there. I mean, you used the word vulnerability before too. There's a values piece there. I mean, even thinking about the name of your podcast is leading with integrity, right? Like there's this willingness to say, or do I have the willingness to say, I'm going to do this even though I don't know how, or I'm going to do this because it's the right thing to do. I'm going to do this because it's the right thing for us, right? And I mean, everything that we've talked about today, I mean, so much of that, it comes down to that vulnerability, it comes down to trust, it comes down to self-efficacy, it comes down to support.
Definitely. And I think, I mean, there's a parallel there to leadership itself. And I mean, one of the questions I often sort of struggle with is, why are there still so many bad managers out there? And I think it's partly, it's that kind of like you said about the change thing. They've had 50 bad managers in their career and they think that's just the way it's done.
Yeah.
But for me, it's the opposite. Like, you've had those bad managers, therefore you shouldn't want to repeat that experience for the people you're managing, right? And the same goes for these change programs. You've seen it done badly 50 times. Now it's up to you to make the change. So do it differently, take a different path. And there are those, you're right, it's the two choices, the inertia. It's either you just stay on the couch and do it the way it's always been done, or you get up and you try a different approach and see what happens. Because if nothing else, you'll learn from that experience.
Yeah. Well said.
But it is tough. We're humans and we don't like those messy things as a rule.
Yeah. We like sitting on our couches too.
Yeah, they're comfortable, right? And the TV's right there and the snacks are here. And
exactly.
I get it. I do get it.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but it doesn't stop it being frustrating either, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, how are you doing for time? Are you good for a couple more questions?
Yeah, let's keep rolling a little bit. Yeah.
Let's do a few of the fun ones. I have to ask you this one because I feel like there's a fun story behind it. What is the cringiest thing that you've ever seen someone do in a training or a leadership setting, and what should they have done instead?
Oh, gosh. Yeah. So this is a great question. Obviously, the work that I do is in this space all the time. There were a lot of different things that came to mind like immediately, with this question. I think the first one, you talk about getting people to change. The cringiest thing for me is the death by PowerPoint slides, right? People who are still just throwing a bunch of just crap onto slides and 10-point fonts and, just horrible stuff, reading the slides, I just assuming that people are going to make sense of things, right? It's baffling to me, even within my own industry, right? My industry I operate in, learning and development, right? I regularly, of course, I'm a big proponent of professional development. I regularly, attend all of these different webinars and all sorts of different things, LinkedIn Live things, whatever it is. And I'm astounded by the poor facilitation that people continue to do, even within my own field, right? So, the cringy stuff, the 70,000 PowerPoints, slides and, all of this sort of stuff. And, here's this person who's just like reading the slides, all that sort of stuff. Humans, we're storytellers. Like, we had verbal language and we told stories far before there was written language, far before we were recording, all of this sort of stuff. We told stories. Why we have gotten so far away from our ability to tell stories, why we don't curate that skill more in the workplace, why don't we encourage that, and why don't we incentivize that, why that's not showing up in performance reviews is wild to me, right? Because my ability to tell, and people say, oh, well, storytelling doesn't have a place in the workplace. It absolutely does, right? Because I have mountain ranges of data that I'm sitting on. I need to be able to help you understand what that data is, what you're supposed to do about it, that's a decision I want you to make. And I want to be able to tell that story in such that here's exactly all of the horrible things that are going to happen if we don't make this decision, if you don't do this thing, right? So I think that's one of the cringiest things. One of the other things we talked about vulnerability before. I think maybe we've moved beyond this because people have experienced this gone so poorly, but is like forced vulnerability, right? Making these kind of performative, like, okay, everybody, I want you to go around the room and share your deepest struggle. Are you kidding me? Like, nope,
No.
but these like, let's go around the room and all share a mistake that we've made recently. I am all about how do we create spaces of psychological safety, but you have to do the real work of that. If you have a senior leader or a C-suite or a CEO of a company saying like, let's everybody go around the room and share a mistake, I'll start, right? And they share that. And I've been in some of these spaces, right? They start and it's like, okay, cool. You shared a mistake, right? But the problem is there's no one to have ramifications for you. You're the person in charge. Maybe the board of directors or something like that. Maybe your advisory board or something like that. But like the frontline person or that middle manager to be like, yeah, I totally screwed something up. And like for, about a 4-hour period of time, we had like a $500,000 contract that was on the line or whatever. Nobody's going to actually participate in that. The problem is when we force that. So, I mean, that's another one of those like cringy sort of things. I think another thing too for me is like the inability to read the room. When people just push through content, they push through a meeting agenda, they push through an initiative because it's like, we just got to get through this, rather than whether it's in a virtual setting or an in-person setting and looking around and seeing like what are the nonverbal reactions we're getting from folks. Where's people eye contact going? Sometimes you can even feel that palpable energy shift. The inability to read the room and do something about it, right? Again, this comes back to like presence and not presence under the tree, right? Presence with a C, right? The recognition, people having empathy for other individuals. Like that's some of the cringy stuff, but that's just a few things.
Yeah, I think I'd add to that, almost combining those last two is like the humble brag equivalent of vulnerability, where they're like, yeah, I need to be vulnerable, but I can't really relate to all these people I'm talking to. So I'll tell a story about how hard it was for me this weekend when my Ferrari broke down or something really ridiculous like that,
Yeah. Yeah, the CEO, I mean, you remember that video, a couple of years ago, the CEO, posting a video of crying, talking about all the layoffs, all this sort of stuff. I mean, that sort of stuff, yeah, of like, oh, woe is you, and not recognizing, I mean, people are trying to, put gas in their car right now. They're trying to feed their kids and like, oh, I'm so sorry that, you got into an accident with your sports car on the way to your second home or your vacation in Hawaii or whatever it is. And it's like, okay, no.
Yeah. And even worse when you're the employer of all those people in the room and they're like, okay, but you're not paying me anywhere near that much. So
yeah.
Could you not have distributed that money among us instead? Like,
right,
are we not doing a good
job? How about a cost of living increase? Yeah.
Yeah. It is terrible, isn't it? One of my pet peeves is the reading off the PowerPoint slide. I just, like, you're basically saying to the room when you do that you think they can't read. Because if they can read, just send them the slides. There's no need for you if that's all you're going to do.
Yeah. It's the classic, like, this meeting could have been an email, Yeah, send me the slides. If you want to be fancy about it, do a voiceover or something like that, do a little voiceover recording, but don't waste my time. Read, like, I read bedtime stories to my kids. Like, that's the only situation in which I'm going to read to somebody else. Like, I'm not going to read to my peers. I'm not going to read to clients. I'm not going to read to my superiors,
Yeah, I think it's that one we can probably attribute to nerves and public speaking. Let's be kind to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at least have some vocal intonation. If you're going to read to me, at least, have some vocal variety.
Yeah. It's a tough one. We've probably all done it though at some point in our lives.
100%. 100%. Yeah.
Okay, fun questions only now. That's all we've got left, really.
Okay.
If you could go back in time to the start of your career, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Yeah. This is such a good question because number one, I think like everybody should regularly kind of ask themselves this because I think it helps you kind of see like how far I've come or how far I haven't come, So a couple of things, I'm at this point, I mentioned before, I'm in my mid 40s, and I'm at this point where my hope is that I have less years working in front of me as I have behind me now, right? So I'm in this kind of this I don't want to say over the hill because that's that weird age phrase, right? But I'm at this point of my career that I spent my first 10, 15 years of my career getting the education, earning the accolades, trying to get the awards, getting, the letters, getting the promotions, very aggressively climbing the ladder, all this sort of stuff. And so I think if I could go back to Mickey, early 2000s Mickey, right? Just kind of starting out, I would say like, you don't have to earn your exhaustion to prove your value. The number of times, the literal sleepless nights, the, falling asleep at one's desk, the, caffeine, pushes through the going, it's not about going the extra mile. It was like going the extra 100 miles, whatever it is. Like just, you don't have to do that to prove your value and worth. I misequated time spent and performative exhaustion, right? Oh, I was here until 10 o'clock last night. Oh, I've been here since 5, like those sort of, beat your chest sort of things that somehow for some reason that was, and it was modeled to me by other people, right? So let's talk about that, but that doesn't prove value. So I think that would be the one thing I would go back to 20 something me and say. I think the other thing you said this really well earlier that made me think of this is as an individual who is and really has always been an extrovert, I would encourage my younger self to listen more, ask better questions, right? Like the open-ended, curious questions, like curiosity will probably take you further than coming in with a big voice of certainty, even when you weren't certain, right? So I think that would be another one. The third thing that I would probably go back and share with myself is to pay attention to like what energizes me, not just what am I good at. And that has become really important to me. I mean, this whole career shift thing and becoming a parent and all this sort of stuff, but like pay attention to like, what are the things that are actually charging the batteries, not just what do you have skills at, right? Not every opportunity is your opportunity kind of a thing. So I think that probably those three things. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that third one. I would say that to myself as well. I think, especially because I quite quickly reached that weird point of, I sort of hated all the things I was good at.
Yeah.
Just hated doing them. Like, why am I good at this? I've become good at it because nobody else will do it and it's a small business and that's how it goes. But now I don't do them anymore, funnily enough. Yeah. So, I mean, the first one is, it's a great message and I'm completely on board with it. However, I also remember what the workplace was like in the early 2000s. And I'm not sure that would have been possible. Certainly wouldn't have been with the boss I had at the time.
Yeah. Same. And that's, I mean, I share this as this historical, wouldn't it be nice if, but yeah, I mean, what was rewarded. And again, I mean, this comes back to our earlier conversation. What was rewarded, what continues to be rewarded. I mean, this like hustle bro culture stuff and, all that sort of, just work harder and work faster. And therefore that's going to be stronger. And I mean, for a long time that was what I was saying and that's what I was doing. And I was rewarded for it. And so I just did it more. The problem is I think the real problem, number one, is the detrimental health, physical health, mental health effects that I experience from that I have taken a lot of years to kind of disentangle from those experiences and kind of undo and redo some of that stuff. The problem is when you become into a position of power and influence in organizations, whether that's hierarchically, kind of organizationally, you get a title and a job associated with that, or you just have the social power and influence within an organization. When you start espousing that as that subjective value now becomes a performance management measure of other people, you're rewarding that in other folks, right? And you're saying this is what good performance looks like. And that's dangerous. That's really dangerous when we exert that level of influence over other people about such a dangerous thing.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think there's two sides to that, isn't there? There's partly, that's just the way the workplace was then. But there's also, more importantly, the lesson for all leaders, managers, bosses, whatever they want to call themselves today, to avoid repeating that pattern. Yeah. Which hopefully all the people in the audience fall in that category, and I'm sure most of them aren't already doing this anyway. So
yeah. We can hope.
Yeah, I hope so. They're probably not going to be listening if they have old school views of leadership, to be fair.
But, yeah, probably not.
Certainly not by this stage of the episode, anyway.
Yeah. I don't agree with anything David and Mickey are talking about. I'm out of here.
Yeah, which is fine, because we're not here for those people anyway. Okay, last question. My favorite question. Usually the one that people struggle with the most. Well, I say that. Not always. It's leadership heroes.
Leadership heroes.
So if you had to pick one person, it's the one person bit that people struggle with. Everyone has a short list.
Yeah.
Could be anyone you can think of. They could be alive or dead, past or present, real or fictitious, but someone who, in your opinion, would perfectly embody leadership. Who is that person for you and why?
Yeah. I did struggle, and with this, because again, that one person, I'll be honest, I have two people in mind, but I'm not going to do two. The person that I've been thinking about a lot recently, that I would use for this answer is Michelle Obama. And, the reason why I share Michelle Obama as that person is I truly believe that she is the type of individual that if I were to run into her on the street somewhere, that I truly believe she treats individuals with kindness and grace and patience and space. And the thing is that the world does not demand that of her, right? Like, she doesn't have to do that. I just find her to be, and this, I mean, it could all be a huge sham, right? I mean, it could be this whole miscreation over her entire career, but I truly believe her to be, she is authentically what you see is what you get, right? I mean, she is such a person of authenticity. I find her to be very grounded. I find her to be very self-aware. I really admire, who she has always been. I mean, anything that she does, I consume, books, videos, all this sort of stuff. Who she is as a woman, who she is as a mother. I mean, raising her kids in the spotlight of the White House. You just know who she is. You just know there is a warmth about her that is, it's aspirational for me. I think her authenticity, I think her leading with her values and integrity forward, her relationship with her husband, her relationship as she continues to do the work now of being a former first lady, but all of the other things that she's been. I just believe if I ran into her on the streets, that I could walk up to her or she could walk to me and we could just talk as two humans. And that to me, I think, is the essence of what a good leader is somebody who she believes in herself, but not so much that she creates distance from other people, right? Like she deeply wants to be in relationships with other people. I think she's incredibly empathetic and genuine. I think she's also very real about what is challenging and what is difficult for her and sharing that with other people. And I admire that she has always used her quote unquote platform, right? Whether that's, back in her lawyer days to her time now, she uses her platforms and spaces to elevate other people, not just to elevate herself. In fact, I don't think she's interested in elevating herself at all, right? I think she sees herself as a mouthpiece and platform for other people. So yeah, so Michelle Obama, or if anybody who knows Michelle Obama, I'd love to meet you, right? I'd love to run into you on the street because I want to know that that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, same. You've probably got a better chance than me, though.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I live in the Midwest, so I might run into her. I think they're back in Chicago now. So.
Yeah. No, I mean, so unfortunately, she has been chosen before, so no bonus points for you, I'm afraid.
Oh, dang. Okay.
But I think
Can I tell you who my number 2 was?
Yeah, go on then. Go on.
Okay, Taylor Swift. Yeah.
Also been chosen before, I think, but only once.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bad luck.
Okay. Yeah. I was toying around with Mr. Rogers too, but I don't know if Mr. Rogers.
Do you know? I'm afraid I think he's been chosen as well. Pretty sure. Yeah. Which I mean, this is good though. It shows people's instincts are good. Yeah. But I mean, Michelle Obama, great choice. Brilliant justification there as well. Yeah. And I think, I mean, again, there's no real way to know with these sort of famous people, is there? But the thing that I think for me speaks most to everything you've said about her is the fact that people have been pushing her to try and run for president or office of any kind, and she says no because it's not about putting herself out there. Yeah. Now, again, we don't know. I mean, political world, that could just be a carefully planned strategy, couldn't it? Like a surprise reveal in a few years' time, for example. Fingers crossed, maybe. But yeah, I don't know. That sort of humility that it's not about me. Really good signs of a great leader, in my opinion. So
it really is. She's someone, and even talking about this just makes me think, oh my gosh, like I should just really reread her works and really deep dive further into her, because there's just so much. She really is an aspirational figure for me. I mean, she's really somebody that I look at not as a copy paste repeat sort of thing, but as this is a North Star of a good human being, a great human being, right? Uh-huh. Truly a remarkable human being who's still doing remarkable, amazing things for this world.
Absolutely. And without getting into too much of the politics of it, I think the other really impressive thing about her, and actually their whole family, to be fair, is their ability to keep being that way and have the resilience and the confidence to be like that, even when there are some pretty horrific and cruel things being said about them by the other end of the political spectrum.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which is to their credit, I think, that they can keep doing that.
A demonstration of resilience that, again, is admirable and is aspirational for all of us. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Mickey, I'm afraid our time is up. More than our time is up. It's been great. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Me as well.
Final thing, only thing left for me to say is, if anyone in the audience, and I'm sure all of them will, want to learn more about you and the work that you do, where can they go? What are the websites and so on?
Yeah, absolutely. So 2 different places. First and foremost, LinkedIn is absolutely where I would suggest folks go find me. Mickey Fitch-Collins, you could probably just search Mickey and find me, but I'd welcome folks to connect with me. I love my inbox messaging. when people message me, comment, connect, if we can do things together, I absolutely welcome that. The other thing too is, I talked about my work at Learn It, and I want to offer to people, if you want to learn a little bit more about what we're doing and kind of hear and jump in for yourself, if you go to learnit.com, so learnit.com/Mickey, M-I-C-K-Y, just like the mouse. If you go to learnit.com/Mickey, you will see on that website an opportunity for you and up to 20 of your teammates if you want to take 45 days, month and a half, to be able to take some of our workshops and kind of see if we can help your organization level itself up and grow and your people grow. That's an opportunity for you to do that. Absolutely no strings attached.
Wonderful. Well, I will put all of those links down there in the show notes so everyone can find them easily. And that's it. Thank you so much again for being with us. Great conversation today.
Thank you, David. I really appreciate it.
Mickey, thanks for a great conversation. I learned loads there, and I particularly love that dynamic around personal development and defense against burnout. That whole little topic we covered there, really interesting. I learned a lot there, and it made a lot of sense, even though it had never naturally occurred to me before. So, Mickey, thank you again for your time today, for a great conversation. Listener, viewer, thank you for being with us. As always, I do encourage you, hit those links in the show notes, go and learn more about this week's guest. Mickey has loads to teach you, and there's a great offer there for some free resources too. So do take her up on that. And if you are like I was nearly 2 decades ago now, you're a new leader, first-time manager in a technical or specialist environment, you've been promoted because of what you know or what you've done, and then you've been left to figure out leadership all by yourself, then that's what this podcast is here for. So you're in the right place. It's also what my Integrity Leaders community is for, to take that step further beyond a podcast. It gives those emerging technical leaders, people like you, some real world guidance, a community of peers, and some practical tools and information so that you can lead with confidence instead of trying to guess your way through it and feeling overwhelmed and lost all the time. Leadership can be isolating, but it doesn't have to be. So come and join us today. Again, website down in those show notes, on the screen if you're on video. It's leadingwithintegrity.co.uk. There are some free resources. There's a great leadership quiz on that website as well with a bit of a sci-fi flavor to it. And when you've finished exploring the website, do hit that green button on the homepage and come and sign up for Integrity Leaders today. I look forward to welcoming you aboard. Thank you again for being with us today. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. Hope you learned a lot as well. Do join us again next week when I'll be chatting with Kurt Busch. We'll be chatting about his coaching practice, his experiences of leadership from way back at the beginning in the manufacturing industry through to non-profit, and then the work that he does as a coach today. We cover topics like trauma and the trauma-informed coaching work that he's done, dealing with the inner critic, and many other things besides. Really good conversation coming up there, so don't miss out. That's all from me today. I'll see you again. Well, I won't see you, you'll see me. I'll be talking to you again very soon. And until then, be a leader, not a boss.